Hi, Product Development course. Today is our second lecture. We are still really looking at the field of product development at an overview. So we're going to get into some broad concepts, diving a little bit into some examples, but knowing that in future lectures we'll go even deeper. So one of the ways that the chapter starts with is talking about business plans. And I think that this is really important if you are thinking about starting your own fashion entrepreneurship company. A business plan is going to be extremely important. Investors and bankers will make decisions to invest or to lend based on business plans. And this is also the business plan also sets out the functions and the structures that will help a business meet its goal. And so this is a document that helps kind of create a plan overseeing the business or even a new division within a current business. This is going to, analyze the market, the competition, identify the resources required, the budget needed, and the goals for the organization. And this will also look at the first few years of business to make sales projections as well. If you've ever seen Shark Tank or any kind of business show, you might often hear referral to business plans. So within a business, a fashion business, there are some basic functions that must exist at each fashion business. So one of the first of those basic functions is marketing and sales. And so marketing oversees, sort of taking in an environmental scan, what's happening in terms of trends, in terms of retail, in terms of customer behavior. They'll be involved in market research. They will help scan with the competition. Well, our competition was carrying this item last season. It looked like it sold really well for them. We want to make sure we include that in our assortment this year. The sales forecast are through the sales function, looking at how much needs to be sold in order to generate profit, looking at margins, looking at all sorts of things related to sales. Sales will also be involved in customer support. Marketing and sales may come up with a marketing plan, and this identifies release dates that correspond with market weeks, trade shows. You don't want to have a product in an ad and then it not be available for a buyer or a customer to have access to. And then also the marketing calendar in terms of thinking of when things are going to be released in terms of marketing and promotions. Another basic business function that fashion companies need to have is the merchandising function, one that I'm sure a lot of you are interested in. And so merchandising covers a lot of different areas, and I actually am going to go deeper into all of these later in the presentation, so I'm going to be very brief on this slide. Another basic business function that a fashion business needs to succeed is the supply chain function. So, you need to have you come up with some great ideas for garments and accessories. You need to have them produced, right? So this is where this part of your team, or this might be if you're a small entrepreneur, you might be doing this yourself. But this is where you're looking at finding different vendors, those that match quality and compliance and standards that match with your business's vision, mission, and values. This is where you manage the purchase of material from mills, buying fabric yardage or buying trim. This is where you're also looking at production and delivery, making sure that anything promised in stores to a client actually does get in store by the promised date. Looking at capacity and reservation with in terms of production, if you know your buy is happening on a certain date and you need your items to be starting to be produced, that the factory actually has capacity to do that. This is also where production contracts will be signed and worked through. Garment testing in terms of wear testing or any kind of safety testing that needs to be performed. Quality assurance and logistics. So very important function of any fashion business. There's also the IT function. Very important, although not always thought about. But a lot of product development happens with the use of technology. So, having an IT person, team, or knowledge really does help, especially as you are communicating with vendors and factories and mills. You want to make sure that all of your IT systems are up and running and you have the appropriate software to keep your business going. The finance function is another really important function for any fashion business. This is because, that someone has to keep tabs for all the expenditures and making sure deposits and money is being received and coming in, that reporting is happening, any kind of reporting to, to stockholders, or even just, for tax purposes, that everything is all in a neat package. So very important and vital part of your team. A lot of entrepreneurs will outsource this by purchasing either software like QuickBooks or outsourcing these finance functions to accountants and other finance professionals. So now that I've kind of gone over, sort of those basic business functions that need to be at your fashion business or the company you're working for, there's also the business structure to think about, and that is something that is considered in a business plan as well. Who has decision-making authority, and what does that structure look like? In small businesses, entrepreneurial ventures, oftentimes it might just be a few people, 2 or 3, who are participating in many of the business functions and making decisions collaboratively together. But larger corporations, those can be either organized by units or divisions. So for example, when I was a product developer for Capelli, New York, I was in the hosiery area. When I was a product developer for Goldbug, I was given a client, and I developed mostly for that one client and some other smaller ancillary clients. But, how a business is structured and how a product developer manages their work can vary depending on the business. A lot of times too, in a business plan, you're talking about your strategic planning. So strategic planning is really done at the top level, developed by the executive team, maybe, the CEO, the owner, the VPs, the top level folks, to set the direction for the future of the company. And basically it's a document that kind of helps to predict or talk about what needs to happen for that future that they envision to be accomplished. But it also needs to be realistic. If you're, not taking into account what you do well and what your supply chain partners can actually do when making that vision, that strategic plan might fail. So, that keeping it realistic and achievable is extremely important. Also part of that strategic plan usually is the mission, vision, and values of the organization. And so a lot of fashion organizations really do have strong mission statements, vision, and core values. I have visited DSW, their corporate headquarters in Columbus, Ohio, and they actually have, when you walk right into their corporate offices, their values are written on the wall, very aesthetically pleasing, and all new employees sign the wall to say, I am buying into DSW's mission, vision, and values. So that was a very visible way to show that company truly cared about its core values. So, mission, it reflects, why the company is in business, maybe their heritage or background, if it was founded by 2 women or, founded by an explorer, founded by someone who was an athlete, things like that. And the mission also focuses on the customers that the company serves and what makes the brand special. Vision is sort of like the future, geared towards the future, what that brand wants to be and how it's seen by the world. And the core values are what the company holds important as a business. So here is your first message board. Actually, we only have one message board this week. So if you want, you can hit pause in the video right now and go complete this, or you can just wait until the video is done to add to the message board. But basically what I want you to do is to choose a brand or a retailer that you like, go to their website and look up their mission, vision, and values. On the message board, I want you to copy the link where we could find that information so that we can access it. And then I'd like you to add a few of your own thoughts about how this company lives up to their mission, vision, and values, or suggest ways that they could do better if you don't feel that they are living up to those standards. So I'm only having one message board post this week because I would hope that your classmates would click the web links that you have and view a few of these pages that companies put together with their vision, mission, and values. And sometimes they'll only have their vision, and that's okay. Whatever you can find in terms of a company or a brand that you like, and thinking towards vision, mission, and values. So if they don't have all three, that's fine, but a lot of times they will. So happy hunting out there. I look forward to seeing what you all find on the web. So moving on, one of the things, just as a big picture fashion industry piece of information that you should know, is that products are positioned in the market oftentimes by price point. And this list right here starts at the highest price point and then kind of goes more down towards the lower price point. So positioning refers to how the garment relates to others in the marketplace in terms of style, complexity of design, fabric, quality, and price. Brands position their products by identifying elements such as their functional use, the level of quality, the range of sizes available, product characteristics, and price. So if we look at these, couture is really at the top. You might sometimes see haute couture, which is a designation only to companies that are based out of Paris and meet certain requirements. But couture in general can be, in other countries. And typically this is made to order. Clients come in for fittings. This would include examples such as Chanel couture, Dior couture, Jean-Paul Gaultier, examples like that. Next is designer. Now, designer brands can be purchased off the rack, but these are going to be very expensive. So Prada, Dolce & Gabbana, Alexander Wang, those are examples of designer ready-to-wear examples. Contemporary, this is, right below in terms of price point. You're looking at designers like Tory Burch, Anna Sui, Tracy Reese. And so, a little less in price, but still not something that's as readily available to everyday consumers at mass market, right? And then we all have below that bridge, and this bridge is between better and designer, and it focuses on career wear and weekend wear. So examples of that would be Eileen Fisher, Lafayette 148. You can see that that's above better. And better is usually the highest price point you might find in a department store. So for example, CK Calvin Klein, Lauren Ralph Lauren, Kenneth Cole, those are some examples of better brands. Moderate is really styling that appeals more to a mature customer. Examples of moderate brands include Sag Harbor and Norton McNaughton. To help you get the mindset for moderate. Low-end contemporary, fast fashion. This is a newer category. This is, companies and brands that offer fast fashion, but at a moderate to better price point. So examples of that would be Zara and H&M. Then it's really important to think about the junior and tweens market in terms of, this is a market that customers belong to for a much shorter time, but the styling is specifically geared towards, young adults, children in those age groups. Examples of retailers that have brands that meet this need is Hot Topic, American Eagle, and PacSun. And lastly, we have mass market. This includes a variety of brands that have many different target markets, but are focused at low prices. And examples are Faded Glory from Walmart, Sonoma from Kohl's. This is just some examples of more readily available, less expensive clothing. So, moving on to branding. A brand is the image of a business, product, or service communicated to customers through the name, a logo, a symbol, a slogan. This is something that customers will associate, sort of a unique or special or identifiable experience or value with a brand. Branding is a strategy used to distinguish and market the brand through development of products, advertising, and promotions. And the brand image is sort of what the consumer, has in terms of feelings and assumptions about products under that brand. So, just some overview concepts related to branding, just to kind of, again, we're really still at big picture in terms of the fashion industry and branding. One part of branding can be licensing. So when I worked in product development, the company I worked for, Goldbug, had a licensing agreement with Carter's. And so we were the sole we had the sole license agreement for Carter's footwear and other accessories. And so we were trusted to maintain that high integrity of Carter's brand, Carter's packaging, Carter's color standards, and we were able to sell those products to different clients, only those that were approved by Carter's though. So it was a really interesting situation to be in, but I learned a lot about these different types of legal agreements and exclusive rights. Licensing examples that are kind of interesting. So for example, I have the Michael Kors timepiece. Fossil is actually who has the licensing rights for that. Prada sunglasses, Luxottica has the licensing for that. And then it's also interesting to see too, sometimes a friend of mine works for a publisher called Bendon, and Bendon does a lot of licensed coloring books for children because through licensing, you can gain access to special characters, Disney, Marvel, things like that. So that's all through licensing. And, sometimes these agreements expand a brand's product mix, allowing them to sell different product categories. And especially if you're not an expert in that product category, going to one of the experts in that field and licensing out will really help create a smooth transition to adding that product to your mix. License agreements can also capitalize on popular characters. If you wanted to, produce a Star Wars t-shirt, licensing out the Star Wars brand. It also allows brands to partner with other brands to sort of maximize the value between these two brands. And so I've been watching recently that Louis Vuitton and the NBA, National Basketball Association, are going to be making an announcement on January 22nd. And so, it's kind of interesting. Both of those brands already have a high value, but together, combined, it'll be interesting to see if what they are offering even increases both of their values. We don't know yet, though. Maybe by the time you watch to this, that announcement will have been made. Licensing agreements also help extend the life cycle of a brand. So, for example, Dana Buchman, the brand was sort of waning in popularity, and so that brand was acquired by Kohl's. So sometimes these agreements can help expand the life of a brand. And then they can also just provide exclusive product to a particular retailer too. So licensing is kind of a really neat area. It is something that people can specialize in and work in the fashion industry. A few more things on branding, some important terms that I want you all to be familiar with. Brand extensions refers to expanding a brand's reach. So For example, I was looking up car companies that are also involved in fashion and saw like Ferrari was doing some fashion products. So, for example, that would be an example of a brand extension. Lifestyle brands, those are brands that go beyond just a single product category. And the textbook uses Ralph Lauren as an example because you can get Ralph Lauren bedding, you can get Ralph Lauren fragrance, and garments and accessories, right? So kind of those lifestyle brands just go beyond a single product category. Brand portfolio is the management of multiple brands by a single company. So for example, Kellwood and PVH are two examples of companies with brand portfolios. So Kellwood owns XOXO, Rebecca Taylor, Democracy, Parker, and many more. PVH owns Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, Speedo, Izod, and more. So the everyday consumer might actually not be aware that those parent companies have all those brands in their portfolios. Now, a brand umbrella, on the other hand, is a single assortment of brands owned by a company where it's very transparent and obvious to the final customer. So an example of that is Old Navy, Gap, Athleta, and Banana Republic, all owned by the same company. When you go onto Old Navy's website, you can see the tabs across the top for the other websites. You can very easily switch back and forth. It's very transparent and very open. Another example of that in terms of brand umbrella are the private label brands that a company owns. So for example, if you go into Target, under their brand umbrella, you'll find Wild Fable, Exhilaration, A New Day, Who, What, Where, and other private label brands like that. And then lastly, in terms of the terms that I want you to kind of start to understand for branding is co-branding, linking two brands on an exclusive offer. We've seen H&M do that a lot where they partner with a designer. It's a really fun way to generate interest and excitement around a product and brand. So competitive advantage, this is something where if you're thinking about your business plan too, you want to think about what is your competitive advantage. This is really the one thing that you're going to do extremely well. And some companies actually have a few areas in competitive advantage where they do a few things well. So some examples of competitive advantage where you might want to enter the market is focusing on the lowest price, like Walmart, superior quality, like Patagonia and Nike, speed to market, like Zara, production differentiation. So maybe you're going to be better at tech, or you'll have really strong abilities with your function or fit, or you'll focus on sustainability. Those are some examples of things that can differentiate a product from its competition. Or maybe you will focus on service, customer service. Nordstrom's and Zappos are examples of companies that are associated with really high levels of customer service in terms of returns and questions and anything along the line. And then selection. So for example, if you wanted to go and get some workout clothes, you could go to, Walmart, you could go to Target, but if you went to Lululemon, you would find a really, really wide selection of workout clothes. So you could be known for selection within a niche or area. So those are some things related to competitive advantage. Now, we're switching gears one more time. We're going to go into an overview of the steps within merchandise planning. So these will be covered in detail in chapters down the line. So you'll get this is just again a nice overview of the different parts that go into merchandise planning. We will go much deeper as we move forward, but this is just to help you sort of get that understanding of merchandise planning. So typically, an important stage of merchandise planning is market research. And one of the things that I loved when I was developing product was this research phase. One of the things that I got to do with Capelli New York was go to different trade shows and just observe and look at what was available, see what new things designers were putting out there. It was really fun to do that portion of research for me. I also enjoyed going to trend forecasting sites like WGSN and looking up the images that they were taking from all over the world. Pictures from retail windows, displays, to packaging design that was interesting, to festivals and concerts, what people were wearing on the streets. That was a really fun part of the research process, to be able to look at all of those things. Additionally, usually with my director, or when I was a director, I'd do it myself, is go around and shop the market. And so you'll actually have a project in this class to go out and shop the market to get a little bit of an experience of what that phenomenon is like and how you would use the information you found from shopping the market into your market research. Sometimes you'll work with your sales and marketing team here to look at that research together so everyone is on the same page. You'll look at sales reports of how the current product you have in store is performing. This is extremely helpful in thinking about any styles you might want to update for following seasons. And updates can be like, you'll keep the same silhouette, but you'll change the fabric, or you'll keep a similar print, but change the silhouette. So, kind of seeing what's selling can help you make decisions for future seasons. You'll also be able to monitor the brand's social media. So consumers do really share information. They share on the feedback they leave on retail sites. They share on social media. So you can really get some insight to things that the consumer is looking for in terms of silhouette, style, color, fit, just by looking at social media. And, this is also a time where you start discussing how your organization, your company, is going to interpret what you're seeing in terms of the trends for color, fabric, trim, and silhouette. So another, a really important part of the merchandise planning is the line plan, also sometimes called a range plan. And so this is where, you start to define the depth, the quantity of each style, and the breadth, the number of styles that are going to go into the product mix. This is where you're looking at sales and margin goals and how best to achieve those. A lot of times which one of your products costs less to produce and manufacture. And so you're kind of looking at that, thinking about that. You're going to decide a balance based on the customer demands. Is there more demand for dresses? Is there more demand for leggings? You're going to make sure that the balance of the line reflects consumer demands. And, to develop the plan, it really helps to analyze last year's sales plans, different parts of the strategic plan. Maybe your CEO wants you to add or subtract from a, certain area. So that's good to pay attention. Anticipated reductions, if you are thinking, after the holidays, there's going to be a reduction on all holiday pajamas, you kind of put into your plan, you plan for those reductions. You think about the targeted, first price, what you're hoping it reaches the floors at, the volume, margins, anything that's changing in economic conditions. For example, right now, a lot of fashion folks are watching sort of tariffs in China, because that may impact where companies want to produce their goods. So just kind of keeping a scan of the environment, things that could impact sales. And then any requirements of the marketing plan are considered too. So the time and action calendar, in our textbook on page 42, there is an amazing example of a time and action calendar, like beautiful, pristine, perfect. So please check that one out once you get your textbook. But the time and action calendar is like the tool that helps you make sure that everything gets done on time in order to get the items to store by the date that you promised your buyer. So it's really important because it gives you your deadlines for the different parts of developing your line. Like, when do colors have to be approved? When do strike-offs have to be approved? When do fit samples have to be approved, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really all of the dates and deadlines for your season. And so you typically, when creating a time and action calendar, you start with those fixed dates, like what are the delivery dates the buyer needs the goods? Or if you're showing goods at a trade show or a market week, when do those need to be shown? And then you work backwards to fill in the dates for the line preview, line approval, order confirmation, all the steps that come in between. And so this helps you make sure that your fabrics are ordered on time, your trims are ordered on time, your samples are approved, everything goes according to plan. So traditional 52 week plans still work for basics, but because of trends in today's fast fashion, if you work for Zara, your plan may be as short as 4 weeks. Here is an example, but again, in our textbook, there was a beautiful example that you should check out. In terms of the next phase, assortment planning. So this is where you're really looking at the variety, volume, diversity, and distribution. How many fabrics, colors, styles, sizes you need in your line to meet consumer demand. This is often based on current data. And what's performing from previous seasons. Interestingly enough, when I worked for Goldbug, Kohl's was my target customer. And so Kohl's actually tracked the size ranges at each store. So if some stores sold more larges, that store would actually get shipments of more larges. Or if that specific store sold more smalls, that store would get more smalls. So it was really interesting that assortment planning, even sometimes with Kohl's, went to sizes by store. Really fascinating. So, merchandisers, will work on that depth and breadth of the assortment to make sure that the line has everything it needs in terms of on-trend garments for the customer. Line review will come next. And, this is when the line is presented to executives, sales reps, buyers, and sometimes even people who are in the target customer group for feedback and review. And so this really helps make sure that if you have any styles that really aren't strong in your line, they get removed at the time. It helps find gaps in the line. Again, maybe you might have some insight that your customer is going to be looking for more dresses next season. The VP of design may say, please add another dress to the line. This is a chance for you as the product developer to also pitch the line based on what you were thinking as you were coming up with it. And then, once the line is, previewed and adopted, you can really move forward with sampling, tech packs, and other parts of the product development process. So that next part of the product development process would be line development. So this is where you would start, again, making tech packs and specifying color, trims, construction, materials, and all the stuff you need to your factories. Usually your tech packs will include flats or sketches for visual reference so they know what they're making, like in the example I've posted here, a jean jacket. Color standards are matched, testing is completed. So testing can be things like wear testing of a fabric. Actually, there's a machine that can rub a fabric a lot of times to see if it will, break apart or if it will have strong wearability. A lot of activewear garments, undergo that kind of testing to make sure that as the arm or the legs rub together during workouts, that the garment doesn't fall apart very quickly. Any kind of label requirements or construction requirements are all communicated to the factory at this time. And any issues are resolved with styling, fit, construction. And this is also too where sometimes if you have to reach a certain cost to get a certain margin, you might make design decisions that will help you get to a lower price. So some companies actually have entire teams dedicated to technical fit and specs, but smaller companies leave this up to the product developer. So I've actually worked for companies where I was responsible for making the tech packs, but some of my friends worked for companies where they just came up with the concept and others made the tech packs. The next stage here in merchandise planning is costing. So merchandisers will have their factories give them samples, and oftentimes you'll send that request for samples to multiple factories so you can find the best quality and pricing. Merchandisers, along with their supply chain management and sales, marketing and sales team, will help make sure that the garments meet the gross margin targets. So, if we know that our end price point in the retail environment is $9.99, what do we have to sell it to our retailer for, and what do we have to have the cost at to make sure we're maintaining our margins, and even sometimes being mindful of the end goal margins for the retailers that you sell to. If a garment is too costly to make, modifications can be made to bring it down in price point, or maybe it gets dropped from the line. And so one of the things that I experienced when I was developing hosiery for Kohl's is Kohl's wanted some products with bows. To actually add bows was too costly. So for the end product, we ended up just knitting in the bows into the shape of the sock instead of actually attaching bows. And that worked with the buyer. Much communication with the buyer during the time we were processing it, explaining to her, if we want to have the bow as part of our trend for that season, we're going to need to do it this way to make sure everyone meets their margins. Line presentation. So this is really where you're starting to talk to your buyers about how the line is shaping out. A lot of times I would present to my buyers a planogram at this stage, as well as samples. This is also where you want to be aware of any customer preferences that are shifting in terms of color, silhouette, material. And this is also an opportunity, if you're working with your buyers, to fine-tune the brand's niche in terms of comparison to the competition. So, if a buyer had a question like, how does this product, we're marketing this swimwear trunk as it helps protect from the sun, what's the SPF of this fabric? So we would work with our testing agencies to, find that out. Like, was this a 50 SPF? Did the rash guard protect the skin, and at what level? So that could help the product be more competitive against others in the market if they weren't listing their SPF on their tags. So there were some things that you could still do at this time to help the brand be more competitive. So next stage is production control. And so I was very fortunate when I worked in product development that my supply chain team was very communicative with me and filled me in on things as part of the process. But, this is where, production decisions are made based on labor cost or how close the factory is to the suppliers, the ability to, do a certain finish or process, the ability to meet compliance and sustainability standards, to meet capacity, quality, delivery requirements. And so having clients like Target, Walmart, Kohl's, they all require that factories are approved before you produce anything at them. They want to make sure that the factory lives up to certain standards. Especially Target had very high quality of life standards, which is really cool. So I feel very comfortable buying garments from Target because I feel like they do a really good job at inspecting factories. And so that was just something that was really important. So even if I had a cheaper factory somewhere else, if they weren't already approved by Target, that added time in my production timeline. And so sometimes I could get a new factory approved because we had enough time, but other times to meet in-store delivery dates, I could not. So that's just kind of something to think about in terms of production decisions. And a lot of times you are not making them unless, again, you're a small company. Usually there is a supply chain team that makes those decisions with your input and advice, of course. But the main thing is that the items are delivered on time. So this is the end for the week 2 lecture. Again, if you're feeling confused or you're feeling this is a lot, just remember this is an overview. We will dive deeper into all of these. And again, if I'm using terms that you don't understand or that I didn't explain so well, the textbook has a fantastic glossary in the back of it, so feel free to reference that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. I'm always glad to answer any questions that you might have about the presentation and anything else. So I hope you enjoyed this week's lecture, and I'll see you again in the week 3 lecture. Bye.